Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, and we've set out to create a platform where alumni can network and connect through their common bonds, whether it be college relationships, college alumni, whether it be Greek organizations, business alumni associations, or athletes, a place where they can all go in a community with loyal, trusted people. And we've developed this show to teach and inspire athletes that there is life after sports. And we're really excited today to have Scott Fox on with us. And Scott is a former collegiate baseball player at Brown University. He's a founder of Champion Playbook. And what he does is he does a very creative version of sports psychology, which we're excited to hear about. So, Scott, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rob. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great. So, I always ask this question. First off, tell me how growing up athletics just kind of shaped your personality, so to speak.
Yeah, well, it was really important for me. My parents recognized early on that I had some athletic skill. This is, way back in the day when people just it wasn't as automatic that you would play sports like it is now with a lot of kids. You kind of have that 4-year-old who's playing soccer these days. That wasn't the case back in the day. But my parents forced me, and literally kicking and crying, to play baseball. I was, I think, 9 years old at the time, and I stepped out onto the field literally with like tears in my eyes, and I came away. It's like, oh, I like this.
That's great.
So my parents knew that it would be good for me, and they were right. And so what did it do for me? It opened me up. I was a very introverted kid, and it got me to be able to make friends, have, some nice ego stuff going on there because I ended up being a nice athlete. And, really shaped me because, it just gets inside your blood. Honestly, I've learned about myself later as an adult, and the things that I like are physical movement. My body is still something that's important to me, and I think that athletics is great for everybody who. I'll just stop there. It is great for everybody.
Absolutely.
And the other piece of it is, of course, the challenges that come with it. And I ended up creating my business many years after I stopped playing competitively, because when I was playing, I knew I was missing something. And it was the mental and emotional, we'll call it, or the non-physical. And so that became the basis of creating this business.
Great. That's something we'll definitely talk about a little bit later. So the question I always ask people is, did you dream of being a professional athlete? And again, you were a baseball player, so I'm assuming that would have been the sport.
Yeah, so I did dream. I did play football all the way through high school and got recruited to play in college. But I have to say that football practices, they were not that much fun for me. I love playing in the games, and I just thought, okay, I'm going to focus on baseball and become a professional athlete. Yes, that was my goal. And again, that's a great question that kind of led me to creating this business too, because I did not meet that goal. And as I joke, I don't look like it today, but I was usually the strongest, fastest player out there, sometimes 5 tools. And I was not consistent though. I'd have scouts look at me and they'd say, wow, let's keep looking at him. They'd come back, oh my gosh, throw his file away. I didn't put it together. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, and this is where everybody who listens to the show, watches the show, I always say this is that I had a dream to be a Major League Baseball player. Unfortunately, talent wasn't there, so I'm doing this. Going through high school, I mean, there's so much dedication to sports, and it really doesn't matter like what sport. I mean, everybody I talked in, even myself, I was a runner in high school and college, so I understand that the kind of the dedication that athletes need to do. So.
Yeah.
Kind of going into college and starting, going to Brown and playing baseball there. Talk about how the school kind of prepares you, or did they prepare you for not only playing the sport but future after sports?
Yeah, wow. Man, I don't know if in the 1980s there was any school that was really overtly focused on that kind of preparation. So from a like I use the word again, overt standpoint, no, there was no preparation for kind of life after sports in that way. Of course, as you go through just interactions with people and situations. And hopefully if came from a household or a background that gave you enough, mm, good lessons or instruction, you could kind of make your way through it. It's basically called the School of Hard Knocks. And
Heard that
yeah,
one before.
yeah, that's what we all did. It was a different time for sure than it is today. As far as the school piece of it goes, it was interesting. I majored in something called organizational behavior and management, which basically was a kind of a blend of business, sociology, all sorts of things. And it was a prep for grad school for a lot of people. I didn't do that. I just needed to graduate with something, and it did prepare me in some, I'll call it, subtle ways for
Right.
the future. And gee, now I'm out there speaking with people to try to overtly help people be prepared, because right now, oh my gosh, as we can dive in, there's a ton of stressors that are on people across the world, and then certainly within sport, it's no different. In fact, there's more stress within athletes right now than non-athletes, which is an interesting study that I've seen out there.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. And like you said, I mean, times change. I mean, even back, obviously I went to school a long time ago as well. And I think schools are recognizing it a little bit more now, but I think it's still, depending on the schools, there's certainly a need for help and guidance, with these athletes. So talk about, what we're trying to do here. Obviously, Alumni Direct is creating the platform for alumni. Was there, I guess, take it to when you were there and maybe even now as an alumni, was there interaction with the alumni and the athletes, and whether there were, and I don't mean financially, but I mean more so of just kind of mentoring or
Mm.
talking like former athletes coming back?
Yeah, there was that, and that's a great thing for a school like Brown or any others these days. I think a lot of schools have great alumni networks, or at least numbers of alumni who talk to people. Yeah, so from an athletic standpoint, we would always have some older athlete come back and just take batting practice with us or speak with us, and they look like gods, when they walk in the door, and so they really have our attention. I don't remember him dispensing any great wisdom or anything like that, but it's an energizer and fun to see that. And from a business standpoint, though, I definitely benefited from that. The gentleman who was kind of the local recruiter for sports for Brown, was also a business owner. And he was in the commercial real estate. And right out of school, I did an internship with him. And that was another thing that was extremely influential. That was my corporate gig for many, many years, was in commercial real estate, not with that gentleman, but he gave me a shot. And so I think that alumni experience can be hugely, hugely influential in a young person's life.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think, I've talked to people, and I've, even on some previous shows, I was talking to one guy, he's a former football player, and struggled after college, and that's a big part of what we're trying to, talking about athlete transition, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But
Yeah.
he mentioned just, going, not getting a lot of these athletes come out, and especially if they were star athletes, expecting they're going to get that big sales job, $100,000 plus job, or whatever it might be, based on their accolades, and realizing that that's not necessarily the case. And so going home and just kind of struggling and spiraling, after college, and then realizing, kind of changing things up, and going on to have success. But the one question I asked him, I said, if there was a place that you can go, where you would have other alumni, not necessarily athletes, but just other alumni on a platform like Alumni Direct in the community, where they're offering jobs or whatever, would have that helped you? And he said, honestly, that would have changed the trajectory of my life. So that's kind of what, what we're trying to accomplish here is just fostering that alumni attitude. And I think, some of the things too we're looking at doing is just kind of going into some of these schools and trying to help them develop curriculum around that to help the current athletes as well as alumni athletes. So the next question I want to ask you, this is kind of real big right now. Talk a little bit about your thoughts on NIL, name, image, likeness.
Yeah, wow. Well, honestly, in my world of helping people be their best, it's one more stressor that's out there, that wasn't there before. And, you know, I know that the question is kind of like, is it good or bad?
Yeah, it could be both.
You
So
know, I
you
mean,
give me both sides of it if that's what you feel.
yeah, it definitely is one of those both sided things. I think it's just like most, it's a tool. You can benefit from it if used in moderation, and you can be hurt by it. And if you put too much stock in that, and it also depends on where you are, who you are, all of that good stuff. You know, in general, since I came from a different era, I guess I'm prejudiced that I guess I wish it wasn't there. I wish that college sports was pure, and I wish that it snows in July. You know, I mean, I actually think that the colleges, you know, are really doing a disservice to college athletes. I look at it as college is there for an education, and yeah, you can play some sports and do some other things. And it's of course totally changed, at least at the top levels. At the other levels, it's not. It's still
Right.
about education. It really is for most of the universities and colleges in the United States. But the ones we watch on TV, those kids are in a very different kind of
Yeah.
situation. And
Yeah.
I feel for them. They need help. Their coaches need help. The administrators need help. It's really created I think it's an untenable situation. And we mask it over with, you know, glitz and glamour on TV. Underneath it, I've talked to those university officials and athletes. There's a quiet panic going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, I know some people kind of call it like the wild, wild west, and I agree. I think there's two sides to it. I mean, I talked to some athletes, and they're like, they think it's great, just because with all the, I guess the financial world out there through college athletics and what some of the schools and things like that are getting, you know, they feel like it's good for the athletes, and especially maybe some of the athletes that aren't so big in their name, like you're talking about, like where they might have some opportunities to do
Mhm.
like go to local sponsors and things, and maybe make a little bit of money. But the flip side is, and this could be anybody in life, but talking about some of these young athletes and not knowing that, hey, guess what, you got to pay taxes, you got to do other things, so that whole financial literacy thing comes into play.
Yeah, and that's a good thing if they have guidance and it's used as a situation to learn. That's great.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So, yeah, a big issue out there today, and you know, we've talked about this offline and a lot of conversations in general, is that um, the transitioning out of sports for athletes is very difficult. Whether from a mental health issue, whether it's
Yeah.
financial literacy, there's a lot of challenges, and it's obviously it's challenges for anybody. But I think athletes, especially all these years and the dedication they put in, it becomes, you know, it becomes a true challenge. So talk a little bit about, I guess, talk about your transition out of sports, and everybody's got a different story, and then maybe some of what you've seen with other athletes.
Yeah. Yeah, my transition out of sports was not knowing what in the world to do. I had a liberal arts degree. I was growing up in a family that was all scientists, where you had a very structured kind of career path. And, you know, uh, Rob, you'll like this. What I learned how to do was to kind of essentially network. Wasn't calling it that at the time. I was just asking people, what do I do? You know, and people are very kind. And when I was doing that, I was an assistant coach for my father who loved to coach youth sports. So there's parents of kids that were coaching. And I ended up doing that, and through a series of passing my resume around, I got my first job. Although I will say before that, I mowed lawns, and we joke in our family here. I created a business that was called the Ivy League Gardener, and they're
That's
like,
good.
"That was brilliant." And if you'd have kept with that, you probably would have really had a great business and a great life. And it's like, yeah, that's true. And actually, with you know, a different paradigm growing up, I might have done that. And you see, this is the thing about perspectives. And when you have a perspective of, oh, I went to college, I'm supposed to have a white collar job,
Right.
or you know, whatever, or I don't know anything about entrepreneurship. My parents are both government workers.
Right.
Very, very different way of looking at life, and it affects things. And that's really what I do with my client athletes is we go through some interesting mind body procedures to kind of peel away stuff that can allow them to see the world a little differently. And I won't dive fully into it right now, but we can come back to that. And then
Yeah.
what I see with other athletes is, you know, it's a mixed bag, right? And I love networking too. So on LinkedIn, I'll connect with people, and a lot of them are much younger than me. And I just say, hey, I like what you're doing. Let's chat. And I hear their stories. And this generation, as we've heard before, is going to have 4 or 6 or whatever the number is, careers over the
Yeah.
course of their lifetime. So a lot of these kids in the 20s that I'm talking with, they've already tried something else. And I think that's a healthy thing to do, is to, just go try stuff and see what fits you. Um, can it be more structured than that? Yeah, it can. And I think that it all does come down to, what is that great quote? We're all a product of all the people we've met, all the books we've read.
Yeah.
And so, read a lot and meet people. And I think that if there's one skill that maybe is missing from this younger generation, is how to meet people, how to speak, and how to elicit help, how to ask for help.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing, even for our generation, especially ours, actually, is, men were not taught to ask for help. If you asked for help, you were weak. And we all didn't want to be that.
Right.
So this is a new world where if we can teach people to ask for help and learn how to network, I think they're going to be in great shape, because you're going to find that most people in the world want to help other people.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's great advice. It's kind of like you answered the question about just kind of advice, because you were giving it there, which is good stuff. I think, a lot of people, and I've talked to some coaches and agents and stuff, where the players just, when they're playing, they feel invincible and they're going to have this long career. But, most athletes, their career's over. It could be during college, after college, I mean, it could be before college, but, and even professional athletes, it's not, you still have another 20, 30, 40 years of work ahead of you. And so trying to find something that's meaningful to you. I mean, I was talking to one person, like, and this, you might, I guess you probably didn't feel the same way. I really didn't either, but some athletes that were so ingrained, you ask them when they're done, who are you? What do you want to do? And they're the baseball player, the football player, the basketball player, hockey, swimming, whatever it is, but it's not Scott or Rob. It's what sport they did that defines them. And so that's kind of what, my mission too, is just to wrap my arms, and as a company, our arms around these people, whether it be athletes or other alumni, and just try to guide them into doing things the right way. And you kind of hit on their networking being a key thing. So fast forward now, you've talk a little bit, talk about what you're doing today
Yeah.
and some of the impacts you're having. And maybe, obviously we're not giving real people, real people stories, not names, but just
Yeah.
how this is impactful in what you're doing, this specialized version of sports psychology.
Yeah. And I'm gonna surprise you and broaden this a little bit here too. So
Okay,
in
great.
this in the Scott Fox umbrella here of things, we'll call the big umbrella well-being. Okay.
Okay.
I really I've always been passionate about staying fit personally, and then seeing how other people around the globe are not well, whether it's physical or non-physical. And actually, I don't even like that delineation. It's just health. It's just wellness. Within that umbrella, though, we've got my Champion Playbook group, where I'm working with sports folks. I'm also collaborating with a local holistic doctor here in the Washington, D.C. area. We're about to roll out a beta test for some corporate wellness, where we'll blend what I do with what he does. And then I still have my toe in commercial real estate. I spent a lot of years in that world, and a partner of mine and I are trying to put together, call it a new paradigm for how to construct and operate. We'll call it mixed use or commercial real estate, so that it is overtly being used for the betterment of people. And you think, well, what is it used for now? Well, what it's used for now is really just a financial vehicle, and
Right.
that's it. And I'm sorry, I've been in the kitchen, so I know what's happening back in the
Yeah.
back of the house. And so, those are my 3 things that I'm focused on right now, but overall well-being. So back to Champion Playbook, what is that? Well, about 12 years ago, I started to work with young athletes, because I was looking to be the best coach I could be. My daughter in particular was getting into Little League baseball. She wanted to play with the boys, and that was great. And I thought, what can I do to be the best coach I can for her and for all the other kids? And I was like, well, what if I fill in the blanks from what I didn't have? And so I said, sat there and Googled something like, I don't know, mental performance baseball or something like that. And some things popped up. And it happened to be during a recession, 2008, 9, 10, in that era. And there was a lot of time on my hands because we're not doing a whole lot of commercial real estate back then. So I learned a lot, and I found a lot of processes that actually could be very beneficial for, I'll say athletes, but as any human being. And it was not in sports. It was in the world of kind of leading edge medicine meets psychology meets personal growth. And, if I have a genius, it is in finding stuff that works or recognizing when something works. And first thing I came across that I really wanted to dive into was called emotional freedom techniques, or EFT. Also has a nickname called tapping. And it's called that because we tap on meridian endpoints and it clears stuff. And so I'll tell you the story. One day, after practicing on myself, I never wanted to put something out there that I didn't try on myself. And when I did try it on myself, I found that there was a real reaction. I giggled, and I'm not a giggler, but I was in my office and I was doing this, and it's more than just this spot right here. I let out kind of a giggle. I was like, wow, what was that? And so something got shifted by it. So I thought, all right, maybe there's something to this. And I kept learning. One day I was coaching third base, and a kid intentionally got into a rundown to try to get to me and please me. And this kid was a real high-strung person. He had a lot of stuff going on in his house. He had, one of his siblings was very, very ill. He's got other things going on. He slides into third, he's tagged out, and he just starts to cry. And the people in the stands thought, oh, he's hurt himself sliding. I knew he was just emotionally spent.
Yeah.
And so it was the third out of the inning. And I said, hey, little Johnny, come over to the fence over here. And I said, just do what I do. And I just start tapping on these spots. And kids will do anything at that age. He's not asking any questions. And in retrospect, I probably should have asked parents first. I did this.
Today, you got to do that for sure.
Yeah, but I wasn't touching him, and I knew there would be no harm to it. At worst, it would be a strange-looking, benign use of time.
Right.
And within, I don't know, a very short period of time, 45 seconds, a minute or something, his face goes back to normal. He had that real flushed face. It went to normal. He stopped crying. I never said a word like, it's okay, just relax, stop crying, whatever. No, none of those platitudes that us coaches use. And he went onto the mound. He was the pitcher for that inning, and he pitched better than he ever had before.
Wow.
And I was like, that kid should never have been able to come back in the game. I've seen him cry before. He always spiraled out of control, and I just had to sit him down. And so I thought something happened. And then I'm a skeptic. I'm not a cynic, but I'm a skeptic. And so I waited 2 years. I kept practicing this or testing it on kids because there's a lot of crying in baseball.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And so after 2 years of, a dozen different kids all having that same experience of quickly doing a 180 and playing better than they had before, I was like, okay, I'm convinced. I went to school on it. I got a certification in this EFT. It's a real cert. I tease my kettlebell cert friends, and I'm a kettlebell instructor as well. You can get a certification in that in a weekend. The EFT certification took me over 2 years. Another one called energy psychology took me over 4 years. Shouldn't have taken that long, but it took me a while. And I just finished up another one in something called process healing method that took me about 18 months. No, excuse me. Took me about 10 months on that. I've been doing it for 18 months, but the cert was 10 months. So these are real things. And, what I'm finding is that they're just great solutions for the times that we're in right now. People sometimes get a little angry at me when I say this, but it's peer-reviewed science journal entry stuff here that the techniques that I'm describing are much faster and much longer lasting and help more people than cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the mainstay of modern psychology. Ironically, the creator of that went to Brown University, and yeah, and he just passed away. He was 100 years old. His name was Dr. Daniel Deck. I had no idea until I saw his obituary in the Alumni magazine, and I loved his quote because it's always relevant. He said, before I got into this cognitive behavioral therapy that he created, he said we were doing Freudian kind of expository methods, and that was all the rage in the first half of the 20th century. And he said, I looked at it and I said, this feels like an evangelical movement. In other words, there was no data. It just was a lot of enthusiasm. And he said, and people really weren't, responding to it. And now, he created that. And now I think we're in the era of, hey, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, it was really good. It was the best we had at the time. We didn't invent anything else since then. Now we have invented something that's better. Sorry, folks. It just is. And it can be used to the benefit of athletes in ways that is, I've found at least, and I'm just going to speak for my client base, they enjoy it more. It's more fun than just sitting and talking to a psychologist for many sessions. It's using the body, which athletes love to do.
Right.
It's fast. Here's the stats, and then I'll stop talking here. In the peer-reviewed journal that I'm happy to share with everybody, it's actually on my website referenced. It takes 15 sessions to get a measurable, significant reduction in anxiety using cognitive behavioral therapy, the typical, versus, it's 5 sessions of the techniques that I use. We'll call it energy psychology. And honestly, with my clients, their performance usually gets better, much less than 5. Oftentimes it's,
that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So tell us how people can find you.
People can
even
find
though you're
me
up in Washington, I'm assuming you could be all over the place, all over the country with virtual these days.
Yes. Yeah. So, yes, I live in the Washington, D.C. area in Northern Virginia. They can find me on my website, which is championplaybook.com. You can also just email me. I'm scott@coachscottfox.com. And I am on Instagram, coach_Scott_Fox. I don't post a lot, but you're welcome to DM me on that as well.
Well, we'll definitely post all this in the notes, and we really appreciate all your time. And for us, you can find us on alumnidirect.com. You could also follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram. And then, to see this show, go to our YouTube channel, or it's also a podcast. And we really want to make a positive impact in helping athletes, again, through transition out of sports, and just teach people the right way to network. So thank you, everybody. You all have a great day.
Thank you, Rob.